I'm skeptical of the current live streaming bubble, and I'm skeptical of Twitch versus Mixer. Let's talk. This is MultimediaJay Radio Style for Tuesday, October 29th, 2019. Let's start the show.
MultimediaJay Radio Style.
Some people out there are having a hard time believing that I'm going to use the podcasts for anything other than gaming discussions, I'm guessing. Considering how I've been focused on gaming so much for the last couple of months, I think we are long overdue for me to remind the audience, particularly since the 10-year anniversary of MultimediaJay Radio Style has kind of snuck by us recently. I think that I need to remind folks that the podcasts are about saying stuff more than showing stuff. They're made to be listened to rather than watched, but also they can be about anything that I have a strong opinion on. Anything, tech, gaming, or otherwise, as we've seen throughout the span of this year alone. Now, let's talk about live streaming, because there's been a lot that's been catching my eye with the live streaming scene over the past several weeks, in the news, on Twitch, and otherwise. I have my skepticism towards live streaming. I think that live streaming has a bubble going on right now, similar to the bubble of early YouTube when the vloggers were dominating everything. There are some parallels to early YouTube and the current live streaming scene, which I will get into at some point later on. But we have to build up to that, and part of that is this notification that I received recently in my news feeds that a third streamer is now going over from Twitch to Mixer. So it's not just Ninja and Shroud anymore. There's another guy in there too, and I'm not too familiar with the live streaming scene, so I barely know any of these folks, if at all, in terms of having seen their content before. They often play games like Fortnite and whatnot that I am absolutely not playing. I don't want to be listening to a bunch of whiny kids talk about how they pwned me after circle strafing me or whatever. Or maybe I've just learned my lesson from going up against FPS nuts in games like Quake 3 Arena or whatnot, or Battlefield 1942 back in the day. The bottom line is I would probably need a gaming monitor to get the refresh rates required to be good at those more action-packed games than the stuff that I play, and of course I've been running a TV into the ground since 2008, so what chance do I have? I suppose I could do adjustable dual screen with a fast screen and a big screen if I really wanted to, and switch to the fast screen if I felt like the big screen wasn't fast enough for the game that I was playing. But why stress out about that kind of stuff? It's only video games. There's people out there that take video games way too seriously, and I don't want to join them in how seriously they take their games. I, of course, like to be good at whatever it is that I'm playing, so when you have something where you're going to drive your blood pressure through the roof because you're always getting matched up against some FPS kiddies or something like that who are all jacked up on Monster Energy or something along those lines, and they play video games for like 16 hours a day, I don't know, because they got nothing better to do or something like that, or maybe school's out and the problem gets even worse, but I'm not so sure that video games are something I should really be stressing about anymore. If I recall, and I might be old for saying this is supposed to be a form of entertainment, therefore fun. So if it's not fun, what's the point? Now let's talk about this whole live streaming thing. I hope that with Ninja and Shroud and this other guy, that there was an exclusivity contract involved that paid them a nice chunk of money. Because there's something in play here that none of the people that I've seen so far that are talking about this whole Twitch versus Mixer thing are talking about. And that is the logical fallacy of the false dilemma. For those of you unfamiliar, a false dilemma is when you present something that's either or that isn't really either or. You present less choices than there actually are, and you're too close-minded to make a good decision on something because you're assuming that there are less options than there actually are. You'll see this from trolls in comment sections on sites like YouTube from time to time. But to keep the focus on live streaming, people are talking about Twitch versus Mixer as though you can't stream to both at once. And I know that's false. I know that is absolutely false because I've already seen a streamer Back when I was playing Forza Horizon for the first time last year, I saw Megan Yeah on YouTube, Twitch, and Mixer at the same time. If you tune into any of her streams, you'll actually see counters in the corner of her stream display that tell how many people are on YouTube Gaming, how many people are tuning in via Twitch, and how many people are tuning in via Mixer. And interestingly enough, despite Twitch being as big as it is, YouTube Gaming usually has a bigger part of her audience than Twitch and Mixer do. And the last one I looked at specifically, Mixer and YouTube Gaming had more simultaneous viewers than her Twitch channel did. No idea why that happened, but it just shows that it's not an either-or situation between these streamers. The only way that any of these moves that these big streamers have made makes any sense is if they signed on a dotted line and received a handsome payout to only be exclusive on these platforms when they really don't have to be. The technology is out there for them to stream on everything. But that's not going to be fun for any one of these, competing streaming platforms. So I hope the payout was good, and I hope that it's worth it. Because with what I've seen since, for example, Ninja went to Mixer, it wasn't so much the case that Ninja moving to Mixer made Mixer bigger as Ninja moving to Mixer made Ninja smaller. Because eventually, human beings being what they are, people are not going to want to click through multiple streaming sites just to find something to watch. And I think this attitude extends over to the other streaming services for video, such as Netflix versus Disney Plus versus Hulu, and all the fragmentation that's going on with the live streaming services that you can subscribe to these days. When people smarten up as to what's going on with all of these attempts to corral various demographics into various streaming services, they're eventually going to get like me and they're going to toggle them on and off. So hopefully there isn't too many retention shenanigans going on with these streaming services in the next couple of years, because the best way to handle way too many streaming services like what's currently developing is to shut off your subscription when you're not spending enough time watching one of them to justify the continued expense. I've heard people talk about the whole streaming thing, and people are already saying that, with all the services I'm subscribed to, it's getting almost as expensive as cable. Well, that's a bad thing. That's because you're falling for the marketing stuff. And once again, you're recreating the problems with pay TV on the internet. So now we have a channel flipping problem with streaming services that you have to bounce around apps or through your web browser for. That's not a good thing. I mean, with pay TV, did anybody out there actually like channel flipping? I mean, that used to annoy the heck out of me when somebody would just sit there changing channels all the time and never finding something to watch. And then suddenly, it's been an hour, I better go do something else. Nothing good's on TV tonight. Okay? So what are you spending the per month charge to have all those channels for if you can never find something to watch? Or you're like, I'm going to DVR this, I'm going to DVR that, and then eventually you never get around to watching all the DVR stuff that you've DVR'd. Or, in the case of my dad being a little more old-fashioned, big library of VHS tapes for the remaining VCRs he's been running into the ground for 20 years. And he still sometimes has too much to watch that he never gets around to watching everything. So you got to step back from all of that and ask yourself at some point, is the cost really worth it? Am I really spending enough time enjoying this service to justify continuing to pay for it every single month? I think ultimately the gravy train for all this fragmented streaming will eventually end when people start figuring out that rather basic thing. And they start realizing, I haven't watched Netflix in a month and a half. Maybe I should cut the subscription until the next time I want to watch something. And even the Netflix disc service, to an extent, I'm wondering if having a movie collection is even worth it anymore, because what do you do when you spend $15 on a Blu-ray or whatever? You watch the movie, you watch the stuff on the disc, and then what? Unless it's something you want to watch over and over again on a very regular basis, it just sits on your shelf. So you could spend the money for a movie collection that's going to take up more and more space, and you got to worry about discs getting scratched and stuff like that. And what am I going to do? Do I have to declutter? Blah, blah, blah. Do I ever want to watch this again? Or you can toggle on and off something like the Netflix disc service and just wait a day for whatever you want to watch. Have a little patience, and you just toggle the subscription on and off, send the discs back, and have absolutely nothing to worry about until the next time you want to, watch it again, and just wait a day for it to arrive in the mail or whatever it is. But my own views on what Netflix has morphed into is something worthy of its own discussion some other time. But this is just the thing with all of this Twitch versus Mixer stuff that's going on right now. I'm skeptical that the versus needs to even be a thing. Because in business, there's a little something called a shakeout. And this is what happens when there are too many competitors in a market that is no longer big enough to sustain all of those competitors. The weak players will get eliminated. They'll go bankrupt and go out of business. Or they'll sell and they'll get gobbled up by some of the stronger players in the business or in the industry. Or perhaps marketplace is the most accurate way of describing that. But markets create winners and losers. The question is, who's the loser and when do they become the loser? That's really what matters here. One last thing that we should probably talk about with regards to this stuff before we take a break and come back later with some more things to talk about regarding my skepticism towards live streaming. We mentioned earlier the situation where something just takes too many clicks to find something to watch. And I think that's really relevant with regards to all of these different platforms trying to compete with each other. Ultimately, there had better be a nice payout in these exclusivity contracts, and they better be exclusivity contracts, because if they're anything else, I don't think any of these streamers should spring for them. Because, again, you can stream on multiple platforms, but most importantly, the idea of, oh, I like Ninja, so now suddenly I'm going to start using Mixer just because Ninja's over there, it's not going to resonate with everybody. People are not going to follow, say, 5 or 6 streamers, and most of them are on Twitch, and then they'll click over to Mixer just for this other one. And that's where I think the growth problems come from when it comes to Mixer, is that people are going to click around probably the biggest site nearly all of the time. How these competing sites like Mixer plan on competing with that and getting people to check out more content creators who are on Mixer as opposed to Twitch, that's something that the folks at Mixer need to figure out, because otherwise I really don't see Mixer getting very far in terms of getting bigger than Twitch. And ultimately, people don't want to spend extra clicks just trying to get to something they wanted to watch anyways. In my case, one of the various ways that I've gotten around the various video sites and whatnot out there is by the bookmarks menu that I check channels with. It doesn't just include YouTube. It includes some Twitch channels, and it includes some channels on other video platforms like Vimeo and whatnot. But even then, most of the time I'm just going to look through, I want to see what they've been up to lately. Click over, and unless I get something interesting while I'm on that channel page or watching something on that other site, I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time poking around trying to find new stuff to watch on many sites at once. The same thing with Dailymotion as well. One of the big changes that has happened with Dailymotion in recent years is the brass decided to split off the commercial content from the user-generated content, so now they all exist in their own ecosystems. So how can people in the user-generated part of the platform attract new viewers unless they can somehow get referred from other other channels that make very similar content? How can that possibly happen? That's my question. And with YouTube circling the wagons and changing even some of their policies to be a little more aggressive towards folks who have presences on multiple platforms and encouraging free exchange between them with the various types of content they upload on various platforms, all I see with where live streaming is going is a near future that is a lot more consumer unfriendly. And the question I have is, what are consumers going to do about it? This false dilemma between Mixer versus Twitch is just one example of something that I expect to see a lot more across the board when it comes to live streaming and even video content on the internet in general. It's just the way things are going. The question is, what are people going to do about it? Same thing with the whole thing with Twitch versus Mixer. We already know it's possible for a streamer to stream on multiple platforms at once. The question is, what are people going to do about it? This is MultimediaJay Radio Style. Don't touch that dial.